Paul Poirier was born February 10, 1932 in Waltham, Massachusetts. He had a quiet childhood, attending the local schools and playing with friends, but on December 7, 1941, Paul was 9 years old when Japan attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor, and just a few days later, Hitler declared war on the United States. Despite the United States' initial lack of preparation, Paul can remember how patriotism never died.
There's a lot of patriotism, and everybody was supporting the war. I mean, the women were working in aircraft factories and tank factories and making all the munitions that were required for the war. It was very hectic because people were working long hours, working 6 days a week, 7 days a week. I remember very vividly, and they'd have parades, and I can remember standing on the sidewalks as they walked by with the flag. And it was such a patriotic time that I got the chills when I saw the flag.
May of 1945 marked the official end of the Second World War. Russia and the United States had once been allies, but only in the case of war. Once the war ended, so did their alliance. The two countries had two different forms of government, and because of this, they soon became enemies. Joseph Stalin, leader of the Communist Party in Russia, planned on invading its neighboring countries in the hopes of building a communist empire. In 1949, the Chinese Communists defeated the opposed Chinese nationalists, and 1 year later, the Communist North Korea attacked its southern half, and thus began the Korean War, just one piece of the puzzle that made up the Cold War. In May of 1952, Paul joined the army with the attitude that he didn't want to wait to be drafted.
I went into the army. I volunteered to go into the army, not knowing if I'd be going to over there or going to Europe, wherever. And so I got in the army at 52, May of 52, and I got out in May of 55, so I was in for 3 years. The first year I spent 10 weeks at basic training, and then after that I went to school at Fort Devens to learn how to take Morse code and send Morse code and stuff like that. And that was a 6-month stint, so it took just about a year to get ready to go overseas. When I went in with the stipulation that I would be going to school at Fort Devens to learn how to do that. They give you a battery of tests when you go in, aptitude type testing, to see the types of things you'd be most adapted to. But when I went in, because I enlisted, I didn't wait to be drafted because it was a draft at that time. So because I did go in voluntarily, I was granted the school and was able to go to the school, which is what I had wanted to do.
When he graduated, he was lucky enough to be stationed in West Germany and away from direct combat. When World War II ended and the United States' relationship with the Soviet Union died, there was a decision to be made. What do we do with Germany? At the time, Germany was a divided country. The United States and Great Britain had taken over the West, and the Soviet Union took the East. Not wanting Germany to become an empire once again, it remained divided, with the West being called the Federal Republic of Germany, and the East, the German Democratic Republic. Berlin was divided into two parts as well. Stalin wanted complete control of Berlin, and when he could not have it, he took extreme measures. In the hopes of forcing the FRG out, he decided to cut off all of their food supplies. However, this did not scare off the FRG, and the Berlin airlift was born.
The noose is drawn closer about the western sector of the capital, switches are pulled on generators, and the fuel famine forces drastic power cuts. Berlin becomes a city of darkness, as all ground communication is severed and industry comes to a standstill. But the Western Allies fight back with an airlift of 450 flights daily, carrying thousands of tons of food into the beleaguered capital, flying an air corridor threatened by red.
While all of this was going on, Paul was playing a small but important role in the Cold War. Being stationed in West Germany, his job was to receive Morse code that was often in other languages. For hours he would sit and listen carefully to different frequencies, waiting to catch a scrap of coding that he could then write down.
Because we had to man these radios 24 hours a day. So we had 3 shifts. We had a day shift, which was from 8 to 5. And then you had what they call a swing shift, which was from 5 to 12, I think. 5, 10, 11, 12, something like that. And then there was what they call a mids shift, for midnight kind of shift. And we would go from roughly midnight till 8 o'clock.
He spent 2 years doing this, all while living with his wife Patricia and another German family. He can recall how well they got along and muses about a time when he brought home popping corn, and the German family was flabbergasted with how a tiny corn kernel was transformed into a delicious snack. At the end of his 2 years overseas, Paul was more than ready to start his civilian life and a family. By day, he worked as a painter at the local Raytheon and attended college at night, working towards a degree in engineering. After 10 tiring years, he had an associate degree in mechanical engineering, a bachelor's in engineering management, and an MBA. From there, he worked at the Raytheon in Bedford for about 40 years, still giving to his community by designing and testing missiles. He recalls that 2 days before he retired, he went out to test a project he had been working on for 4 years.
The missile went through the whole launch sequence. It took off. Booster separated, kept going. Boost phase ignited, kept going. The sustainer kept going. Got to 100,000 feet. Turned over horizontally. Went across the missile range. Intercepted a missile. First flight. Totally.
It was an incredible way to retire, and he left with a blast. At the end of his time in the Army, Paul Poirier came home as a sergeant, and when asked, he had one thing to say about his experience.
I firmly believe that there should be a national program where everybody goes into the service for at least a year. The one thing that happens is you get away from home and you realize that you're grounded at home, really, okay? But you've taken all that for granted, and you get away and you mature very quickly and become more, I don't want to say indulgent, but anyway, you basically take care of your own things, and you mature, and you're also, tremendous training. You're not as self-centered